So with me now is Teenaa Kaur, Indian documentary maker. And she has spoken to those people caught up in the riots that broke out following the assassination of Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi back in 1984. It was a year which saw terrible violence in Delhi and across India. And her film is out now. It's called 1984 When the Sun Didn't Rise, and it's being screened across England and Scotland. It's, as I mentioned, already out. Teenaa speaks to families in the capital's widows' colony. Good to have you with us, Teenaa.
Thank you.
You were saying to me just before we came on air that this has taken 4 years to make.
Yeah, more than that, because it took a lot of time to research, and it was difficult for me to win the hearts and trust of the people, because all these women who are living in the widows' colony of New Delhi, the reporters come between 31st October to 3rd of November every year, and they interview them, and then they are reminded of a very difficult past, very, very traumatic memories. So for me, it was not just one interview. For me, it was following their lives, which I did for more than 5 years. And
you built that trust.
Yes, I had to build the trust, and also because documentary films take a lot of time and research on the ground in making, and then of course there were so many different challenges. The thing was that I didn't have the finances, so I had to crowdfund on various stages of making the film to complete the film, and also because the canvas of 1984 is so huge, because there's this the Golden Temple massacre that took place in June, and then after that between 31st October to 3rd of November this happened, and then there were so many other aspects. For me it was very important, and it's a matter of responsibility when you're representing a history, from the point of view of the minorities. It is so sad that the history of any country is written by the rich and the powerful, and those who are in power have been calling it as riots, but the fact is
you wanted to give a voice to the women.
Yes, right. And also, because there was no such incident wherein the Sikhs killed or the anyone else. It was just the community. It's the Sikhs who were killed and targeted throughout the country. And so the idea was to make like a documentary on the aftermath of violence that took place. So that's how I wanted to investigate how does violence affect the people, and how do they negotiate, in which black hole do they put all these memories together and they live.
And what did these women say to you? What stories did they tell you?
Oh, it was very horrific, because of course I didn't want to ask them about what happened in the past, because even if one of them spoke, like
it's
that
reliving trauma.
It was very difficult
for them.
Yeah, because I was like in 2011 when they started used to tell me their stories. I used to just break down. I just couldn't get it. Like how can humanity fall down to such a low point? It was very difficult. But then I realized that they are so strong. They are heroes in my eyes, because they are negotiating their memories and they are living very bravely. So what they told me was that they've been always used as a vote bank politics by various political leaders in India, because every time there are elections, there are political leaders who are coming to them, and they're trying to sympathize and giving them different kind of lure and trying to win the votes. But none of them is really bothered to share the pain or just have a cup of chai with them, because they are from a socially backward class, so they just look down upon, and they're always lured with money. They said that they're not interested in the money part of it. They've got the compensation, which is okay now, but the fact is that they really want to get included in the mainstream of the society in New Delhi, and it's sad that Delhi has just forgotten these people, and they just look down upon so much.
With the widows' colony, just for our audience that might not specifically know what that is, this is essentially, sort of cluster of homes given by the government to those women and children who survived these riots. And it's supposed to be some sort of safe haven, isn't it?
Yeah.
What is it like? I've never been to the widows' colony. Can you just describe to me what it's like?
See, to be honest, it's like a cluster of apartments which are there, and they're all small matchbox houses where they are living together. So So, it was not, it was a very justified thing to do because they lost their homes because their houses were looted. They were set on fire. So in compensation of the lost house, they were given one house in this particular place in New Delhi, and where it's like a sorority of women living together. And most of the women have lost their husbands, and now they are living together with their children and their families. So many of them are retired, but most of them are also working. Yes, still working on the verge of retirement.
Can I ask you, with this is obviously a hugely important issue for a lot of Sikhs. It's also one of those issues where, when we've covered it before, we hear that it's not talked about in India enough, that the voice of Sikhs on this issue does not get heard enough. What's your experience of that?
See, I was very surprised when I started doing the research. I realized that there was not even one documentary film that was made, in India. Delhi is
in actual India.
India. In Delhi, there are so many documentary filmmakers, and they were also present at the time in 1984. So I'm very sad to know that there was no documentation. So I started in 2011, but before that, there was a lot of documentation has been lost, and the first-hand accounts of the survivors, which could have been there, but which are not there till now. So it really, it was very strange that when such kind of injustice happens, why don't the media, why did they not stir up the conscience of the minds of people and go to these people and make a documentary film? Because in Delhi there are so many filmmakers, but no one did it.
How do the women and the women there, or Sikh people that you spoke to in India, how do they feel about India? It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because again, when we've just covered this issue, there are British Sikhs that do not want to call themselves Indian because of this. And
but the thing is that there are a lot of genocides that have happened in the history of the world. It's not only in India, it has happened in Rwanda also, Indonesia as well.
And it's interesting because it's not termed officially a genocide, is it? It's not recognised as a genocide. It's not called that.
Yeah, I'm just coming to that. So what I'm trying to say is that minorities anywhere in the world, are on the suffering end. But generally what happens is that there are external agencies, human rights agencies, who intervene and, who make the justice possible. If not the criminal justice, there are truth and reconciliation commissions which are there. So in India, nothing of this sort has taken place. That is why I think the Sikhs are angry about it. But to be honest, when I screened the film in Thiruvananthapuram in Kerala, there was a film festival there. People who are Malayalis, who do not know the language, but they were reading the subtitles in English, and they really appreciated the film. And many women, they came and they hugged me and they were all crying, and I just couldn't hold myself as well. So they were very, very passionate about the fact that they said that this film should travel, and they gave me a lot of blessings. They said, travel with the film and show the world that who you are, because Sikhs are there in the army, they are there, they are running farms, and they are the economic backbone of the country. So everywhere they're there. So the sad part is that there's no such genocide law in India. So the term genocide cannot exist for anyone. So that is the case which is there.
You were very young when 1984 happened. What do you remember of it?
See, the thing is that my uncle, my maternal, uncle, my Mamaji was traveling in Madhya Pradesh, Patni, and he was pulled out of the train and his hair were cut. He barely managed to, save his life, and he took refuge in a village. But he did not speak to anyone because he had lost his identity in such a traumatic incident. So I grew up on all this anger. When I was growing up, my mother used to tell me stories because I grew up in Ajmer, Rajasthan, and things were very peaceful there, so there was no problem. So, but then there's this issue of confusion and what happened in '84, which I really wanted to investigate. And the journey started in Mumbai when I was alone, and I realized that life can be so difficult for me. And I was reading the books on '84, and I said that if it is so difficult for me, so what happened to those women who must have been illiterate and who had children and who didn't do suicide? They were standing right in front and they were bearing with life, and they were, battling all the challenges to, take care of their families. So that was my connection with the women, and that's how I started doing the research. And I realized that they are socially backward, from the socially backward classes. They did not have any savings account in the bank. So that is why they were hit very badly. So, financially it can still be, taken care of, but the fact that, the children haven't really got educated, they are into drugs, is a very, very sad story,
And you touch on that in the documentary,
yes, in the
impact it has had
Yes.
on them. You've made documentaries before about environmental conservation in India. This is the first, I suppose, historic political documentary for you.
Yeah.
Is it something that, compared to everything else you've done, that I'm sure you care about all the other documentaries you've done, but something that's really close to your heart?
Yes, see, you know what? I really don't do things just for the sake of money, So all my choices have been things, subjects that I've choose are very, very passionate about, that I really wanted to say. And this journey started long time back. At that time, in 2011, I had just done one film on Hola Mahalla, and 2011 I started filming, and from then to now, I did films, on other wildlife conservation, environment of conservation as well. They've also traveled a lot, but the thing is that I don't know, God has really, I think because the injustice was something that I just don't bear in my life. There are two values that I really stick to, and which is truth and justice, because that is what I want.
And you don't feel that's happened yet?
No, there's no justice. There's no criminal justice, which is possible, and I've just forgotten about it. They just, there are only less than 200 cases which are there in the Indian courts now, and they keep on saying that they are going to form SIT, and Supreme Court has ordered, but they're just beating around the bush. So there are only two people who are convicted right now, Jagdish Titler and Sajjan Kumar. And Sajjan Kumar did not speak to me, but Jagdish Titler I interviewed in the film. So his what he had to say is there in the film. And the thing is that what I want is really that human rights agencies, or maybe like United Nations or Amnesty or any other human rights agency has to study this particular incident and declare whether it was a genocide or not. And in the world, history should be recorded as a genocide, because I know that in India this is not possible, because if the Indian government gives the name of genocide to this particular incident, they'll also have to recognize Godhra.
Well, the word genocide, what it and for our listeners, if you go to the UN website, you can get a full definition of it. But essentially, when something's declared a genocide, what you're saying is that someone has to take responsibility for it. It's about, it was intentional. And this is where it gets all really messy and political, doesn't it?
See, but then in other parts of the world, this has happened. People have opened their hearts and they've said, there's this Truth and Reconciliation Commission that happens. So when the commission happens, it's a free, space for anyone to come and walk and say, yes, in, let's say, for example, in 1984, I was very angry with the Sikhs and I loved Prime Minister. Yes, I did these things, but now I really want to, seek pardon from the people, and those people are really pardoned,
Yeah.
So if there's something that can be done in this regard, that would be really lovely.
Let me bring in Pav Singh on this. And Pav Singh is the author of 1984, India's Guilty Secret. Good to have you with us, Pav. Do you agree? I'd be curious to know if you agree there with Teenaa. Do you think it's about truth and justice? Do you think if it was called a genocide, that would make a huge difference?
Yes, I totally agree with Teenaa. First of all, I'd like to welcome Teenaa to the UK, and I look forward to watching her film next week.
Yeah, we'll just sure. Teenaa is with us. Yeah, tell me on that. Everything that Teenaa has said, just on the last bit about the word genocide, and obviously I've just explained why it's not called that. But what difference do you think that would make if it was?
I think it'd make a great difference. Now, you started your program with the word riot. There was no riot in November 1984. In the Indian context, a riot is when two communities fight amongst each other, and that's what it's been traditionally between Hindus and Muslims. What took place in November 1984 was a targeted, organised, genocidal massacre. Now, we have evidence that this was pre-planned. Quite recently, there was a former bureaucrat who said that lists were identified of Sikhs, businesses and homes 5 months in advance, that one of the cousins of Rajiv Gandhi, Arun Nehru, allegedly took part in the masterminding of those massacres. So I think we really need to get the language correct. And I think BBC should really be impartial on this. The word riot is the language of the perpetrators. So I think the BBC really should maybe use language like the massacre or genocidal massacre.
But there is a reason, as I mentioned, that it can't be called a genocide. You know, it's not officially been called that. That's the reason why there is a UN petition on it. There's no ruling on it yet. It's not us. We're actually being impartial in that respect.
Oh, no, absolutely. And, after, the attacks on Jews in 1938, Kristallnacht, after the Srebrenica massacre, after Rwanda, the official line, these massacres didn't happen, they were just riots. But I think we really need to take a more impartial look at this, look at the evidence, look at the testimonies of the victims, the fact that there is strong testimonies that Congress leaders took the excuse of the assassination of Mrs. Gandhi, of 2 Sikhs, and blamed the whole Sikh community and targeted those, and not only through violence and killings, but also of rape. Now, rape is a very hidden story of 1984 and the killing of children, and this has only come out recently, which I highlight in my book.
I have to add again, just the BBC impartiality. We don't have anyone here from the Indian government to sort of represent that viewpoint, and that's fine because we want to talk about this documentary and we want to get, have your take on it as well. Just in terms of what happens next with this documentary, Teenaa, what do you hope to achieve from it? Given there's people like you, there's Pav, and there are documentary makers and authors who've talked a lot about this. We have discussed this issue on air as well. What do you hope will come out of the documentary?
See, the thing what happens is that it's a piece of evidence, and when we say it's a documentary and it's well researched and it has traveled to many film festivals, it has received awards in US, in South Korea, Busan, and in Doc Leipzig, Germany, and in India and so many other places. So what makes it interesting is that when we talk, when there's some kind of a discourse, it's very difficult to listen, because people don't have that kind of attention span. But when there's a documentary film, there's an audio, then there's a visual, you can watch it at that particular time and realize the impact that it has had on people.
What is it the victims want? What is it that the women that you spoke to, the people affected who are still there to this day, what is it that they want?
See, they want 2 things. One is inclusion in the society, in a way that people go and, do some kind of langar there, or, use them for vote bank politics by distributing some kind of blankets or celebrating their children's birthdays by distributing something there to eat or something like that. But they always look down upon. So they want inclusion in the society, in the mainstream society, wherein they are just not used as a vote bank politics, but they are treated as equal, and of course there's justice that they want, they're looking forward to. So, because I don't think that, any kind of criminal justice is possible in India now. The thing that is that, if it is recorded that this was a genocide and, and this is declared as a genocide, this studied as genocide, in the world history, it'll make a huge impact on the minds of people all over the world. There's a lot of Sikhs who had also migrated during the 84, and I've met a lot of people who've been so scarred because of this violent incident, So I think that makes a lot of difference, when you represent your history in a proper way. People who forget history, are the ones who are going to be on the receiving end again.
Your documentary really looks at the impact that it's had on these people and the way their lives have changed. And I understand all the politics that comes with this subject. I totally understand that. Do you feel that perhaps that can distract sometimes from their stories, that we do concentrate a lot on the politics? Or do you think, look, that is part of their story?
No, actually, I think I made some 100 cuts of the film before finalizing it.
Oh, really?
Yes, not less than that. And so, it was very important for me to make a very well-balanced film. And it is also, it is very impartial, and it's well received on cinematically and by audience from various different faiths and cultures. Because if violence is universal, so is non-violence. So is peace, so it has no barriers of language. So I was very happy that, people from various faiths and cultures, when they look at the film and they experience, they also get to understand what it is. So, I didn't make any kind of sermons or any kind of statements. I wanted it to make it very democratic and make it very free space and let the women talk about it, rather than me talking about anything.
And let them tell their story.
Yes, of course.
And you said that, living in India, you talked about your uncle. It was hard for him. How do you find it as a Sikh woman?
I think Sikhs are in so many parts of India and so many parts of the world. So I was also because I've not grown up in Delhi or Punjab. I've been in Rajasthan, in a small place called Ajmer, which is very, very peaceful. And, the thing is that I really wanted to get clarity on this particular event and exactly who was wrong, who was right, what happened. And, and also because after making my first film, and I realized that, this is something which has not been done on that international level. There have been small videos, wherein people are giving their statements and they go around on WhatsApp and stuff like that. But a proper documentation has not been there. So I really felt the urge of documenting it as a piece of history which can be used, when I'm not there. For time eternal. I don't know when justice will be given, but I really stand for it, and I think that if we all practice truth and justice in our daily lives and keep this in mind, this is the intention that we want to achieve in this particular event of 1984. I am so sure that this can be done.
Let me just go back to Pav quickly, because Pav, it's interesting hearing from Teenaa saying, look, I want to get clarity on this. I want to find out for myself. I want to discover this. Do you think there is this rise of young Sikhs wanting to just know more about their history, even here in the UK?
No, I think so, definitely. And I think there's also a growth of separatist politics as well going on. But I think, the reason why there is separatist politics in here and also in the US and Canada is because of the injustice. I mean, we're talking about 3 decades of injustice and protection of the perpetrators. And it's because of that injustice that you have arguments about separatism. So it is a debate that we need to have, not only within the community, and this isn't an issue just for Sikhs. And this was a crime that took place. It's one of the largest crimes in independent India. In 4 days, at least 8,000 Sikhs were killed and many, many rapes took place. And today, those killers are still walking the streets. MPs and former cabinet ministers have not been touched. And this really needs to come out. I mean, the current president of Congress has recently said that he's on the side of the victims. That's fantastic. But the first thing he should do is actually kick them out of his party. And these perpetrators that have been mentioned, they should be arrested.
Okay. Pav, good to have you on. And as I should mention, there is no one from the Indian government here to give us their take on it. But I've just got a couple of minutes left. And Teenaa, as I mentioned, it's a documentary that you work very hard on. It sounds like it's a really, really excellent insight into all of this. And, speaking to these people affected, where can our listeners watch it? And where can they go? How much does it cost? Give us all those details.
Yeah, thank you. So you can go on the website whenthesun.rise.wordpress.com, or on the Facebook page of When the Sun Didn't Rise, or on Nishan page of Facebook, and find the schedule. I'm going to be there till 21st of March here in UK, and every day there's a screening. There's a screening in the colleges and the universities, and on the weekend, on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Sunday. We are going to screen the film in the Gurdwaras. It's a free screening, guys. Please come support the film and show your pyar. And it would be lovely if you can also, donate whatever you feel like, and you don't have to pay a hopping price for watching a documentary film.
There you go. It's free.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's a really great documentary. Definitely worth looking at and finding out more. Thank you so much, Teenaa. It's been lovely talking to you. That's Teenaa Kaur. Her documentary, 1984, When the Sun Didn't Rise, is being screened across England and Scotland now. It's 1:00. It's time for Asian Network Report.